my friend. She's your friend. She's the great Lindsay Rhodes. What's up, Lindsay?
Hi.
Good to see you.
It's great to see you.
Obviously, we watched you for many years on NFL Network, and now your wings have allowed you to fly through SumerSports, doing the kind of stuff you love to do. It was awesome chatting about it all. Super Bowl week down in New Orleans. How's life? How's this? I mean, you blink and half the season's over, but
I
how you holding
know.
up?
I know. I feel like I'm still trying to figure out how like the rhythm of the season. We're like halfway through, so I better figure it out pretty soon. The season is its own rhythm, as you know. Like figure out like how you're gonna get through on a week to week basis. And yeah, I don't know that I've figured it out yet for this season, but here we are anyway.
Can you explain to everybody what your life is like and how do you consume pro football now? Like you guys look at this sport through a very different lens
Yeah.
than what we do here at Go Long, but it's needed. Like I through it's not just analytics. I'll let you
Yeah.
explain, but it's much different than everything that's out there.
Well, I think it's very data driven. And I think that is interesting to me in a lot of different ways. One, having come up in my career in a more traditional broadcast journalism role. In the very beginning of my career, I definitely saw myself as like big J journalism. And, I'm here to find the truth of what's happening on these various teams and stuff like that. And then, as you know, the industry from a broadcasting standpoint has changed dramatically and has turned to much more like chat and at least on a large scale, like broad big media outlets are about reaching the most people possible. And so there came a time in my career where I realized that my ability to kind of uncover things that people didn't know about, that maybe that itch wasn't being scratched, right?
Mm.
Like you're having conversations about what you think people want to hear discussed. Which I know you know just observationally from watching a lot of the television programs about football. A lot of talk about quarterbacks, a lot of talk about stuff like that, which is totally fine. I was always interested in how can I add to this conversation? How can I find something that people don't know is true right now, and maybe the why behind it. And so without football playing experience, obviously that's not an expertise that I can take. Though certainly over the years at NFL Network and Fox before then, sitting with the number of athletes and coaches and general managers that I did, you kind of learn a lot about football in that sense. But the explosion of data in the last 10 years and certainly 5 years has been so interesting to me because we have the ability to kind of look at things in a different way, find answers that we didn't have access to before. We can look into who's good and who's not good and why we know that they're good and how we tell those stories. It's different. And it's not so much that we are changing the sport or the sport is changing. I know there's a lot of people that are like, nerds are coming in and everything's changing and this is all bad. I think it's just different. It's just a different way of having an ability to look at things and figure out, for instance, the example that I like to use is like for so many years, we looked at passing yards, right? So the top 10 quarterbacks, if we're going to put together a top 10 quarterbacks list, where can we go other than passing yards, maybe passer rating? Like there were just a handful of box score stats that we had at our disposal. But when you really peel that back, you understand that if someone is passing a lot, it's likely because their team is down, right? So often you can rack up a ton of passing yards, be on a pretty bad team. And even when you just do simple math and break that down like into a per attempt basis, which was one of the notes I had on Aaron Rodgers last year. He was really high in terms of passing yards, but that's because they were behind. And he was part of the reason that they were behind. And then they were throwing constantly to get back in the game. And just his simple yards per attempt was bad. like very, very lowly rated in the league. So there are a lot of efficiency metrics now that we can look at. And there are different ways to kind of like peel the onion of who's good, why it's good in ways that are more predictive, where you're able to actually say, like, hey, this stat over time has proved to be sticky. So we're going to pay attention to that one and kind of get away from some of those box score stats. This is a very, very, very long winded answer.
No, it's fantastic, Lindsay. I mean, the way you just described Aaron Rodgers is, I suppose I probably wasted a lot of ink trying to explain the same and go long. Covered that game against the Bills, in Orchard Park, and it looked like a funeral for him there. It was ugly. He
Yeah.
was really, really bad. And we'll get into it later. He's looked better than I expected. I think better than
Agree.
most
I
expected
agree.
with Pittsburgh. But there's a lot that goes into that as well.
Yep.
But yeah, I think we have to look at statistics in a different way because you're absolutely right. I mean, hell, we're all setting our fantasy football lineups today. And I got Jane Daniels, and I'm like scrambling for a filler. I'm like, well, Cam Ward, they're probably going to be down by 30, and he'll be throwing his way back. So maybe I
There you
pick
go.
him up.
As long
But
as
like,
as long as too many of those passes don't go to the other team. But
we don't have negative for interceptions. We still live in the Stone Age in our league.
oh, Ty, come on.
But that's why what you guys are doing is so important because I'm the first to admit, like I am kind of anti nerd. I don't know. Like I write these feature stories and I love the psychology of the sport, getting inside these people's heads, like
Yeah.
what makes them tick, fourth quarter, fourth down, everything on the line. You're on E, like what, why do you think the way you think? What have you been through? But I think
Right.
there's a time and place for both. Like we
Well,
need that stuff in those stories, but we need data that does apply. And maybe not necessarily like, the PFF stuff is another debate. I don't want to get you into trouble, but we've seen coaches speaking out on that. Like, do you know this player's assignment? You don't.
right.
But the data that you guys do, from what I can tell, isn't that. It's stuff that really does apply to what we're watching and stuff that you can discern through the seat that you're sitting in.
Well, that's always the goal. And I would push back a little bit, like the data doesn't necessarily tell you something that you thought was good is bad. The opposite can be true too. That was where I came to this from, was like, how do we, in my time at NFL Network, I was like, how do we talk about the people who are doing so much to make this team a good team that no one wants to talk about? Like, maybe you have the best guard in the NFL and no one watches the trench, right? So like, how do we find a way to make that easier to understand for a casual fan? Because it's hard to come up with numerical assessments for solid O-line play, right? Like, that's one of the hardest positions to do that for. And so I enjoy the challenge of that. I enjoy being in conversations that can really dial down into like, what makes this team good? Like, what is it? And, without just relying on the things that feel so basic, because you just
Yeah.
know it's not that. There's so much. The one thing that I feel the most strongly about after like doing this data deep dive in the last 5 years is that so much for so many depends on environment. Like, this is a sport more than almost maybe any other sport that you can think of that is completely reliant on all of the people around you doing their job also. Like 11 people on each side of the ball, all human, all maybe gonna have a bad day. Maybe they didn't do the optimal, they didn't take the optimal action on a given play. Like, there are so many just different moving parts that make it so interesting. If your offensive line, we saw Justin Herbert and the Chargers last night, looks so much better. I think a big part of that was because Joe Alt was back, right? And so you get like a tackle back on the line. There were weeks, for the last few weeks after Joe Alt went out, and the Chargers just kind of melted a little bit. Like, the offense just looked so different. The defense started looking not as good as we were talking about early in the season. And people do what they do and they go, oh, Herbert again. Herbert just can't, the Chargers charging. And I'm like, no, there's a reason. There is a reason. And if you don't believe that the offensive tackle, lifting a very good offensive tackle off the field, in a year where you've already lifted the other all-pro offensive tackle and Rashawn Slater off the field. You're going to take two of those off the field, and you don't think that that impacts literally everything that the offense is going to try to do. Literally everything. The running back, your ability. I mean, the people on the inside now are seeing more pressure because they, don't have as much help. Like, no doubt, Justin Herbert is running for his life. We've seen him scramble more and bring in a different wrinkle to his game, which is fun and exciting. And we even still saw that last night with Joel. But, like, it just changes everything. And that's one person coming off the field.
Yeah.
And the ways that the stories just start to snowball, and you're like, that's not accurate. And so what I find interesting about the data, and when you really like dive into it, is just trying to find out like what the truth of it is. It's still a journalistic endeavor for me. I'm still trying to figure out who is good. Why are they good? Are they actually good? Do we know that? And that's the whole running back conversation. It's hard to know, frankly. And that's why you see guys who are undrafted or seventh round, fifth round, whatever, plug them in. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt in Washington. Oh, look, he's fine. Bucky Irving, later round, plug him in. Amazing. I mean, there are examples all over the league of running backs that are having success that we didn't know if they were going to be good or not coming into the league. And it's because it's completely reliant on environment.
Yeah. What is your greatest finding then? Like, we're 6 games in, there's still a lot of football left. So I imagine you don't want to completely rush to conclusions, but there's some meat on the bone here. What has shocked you the most from what your data has told you?
Well, I think there are a few different storylines this season that have been interesting. The O-line story, the tackles in particular, we've kind of been like deep in the weeds about because there are so many examples. And I think this is true every year. But this year it feels like we've had a number of good offensive tackles get hurt and get lifted off the field. And then what you see is a dramatic decline in those offenses in a couple of statistical categories. Time to throw plummets, right? In at least, and in the Chargers case, it did in the first few games once you lifted those guys off. And then they kind of figured out a way around that. And I think that was Justin Herbert scrambling. And so he just is buying more time, even though he's under pressure. But the initial thing is time to throw drops, and then the average depth of target goes down, which I think you can kind of figure out how those two are correlated, right? Like if you're under pressure, there's just no time. You got to get rid of the ball or you're going to take a sack, and there's no time for that long developing route to develop. So you just dink dunk like all the way down the field to get the ball out fast. We've seen that happen in a number of different places. And so one of my biggest takeaways is that there's only like 11 good offensive tackles is what we found. And
Wow.
then, which makes sense also though, if you think about it, because the size of human being that you're looking for in an offensive tackle with the athleticism and agility attached to them to do the things that you need them to do, that's just hard to find. Like they just don't make humans like that very much. And so it makes sense, I suppose, that you wouldn't have like offensive tackles that are quality offensive tackles growing on trees. But the drop off when you take one of those guys off the field, it is insane. So that's been an interesting thing for me to track, and the ways that that's affected a number of different offenses. The Vikings last night, another example of that.
No Christian Darrisaw.
Yeah. I mean, they're like the Lions, took Taylor Decker off the field for a little, the backups, we would see a pattern of we do a SumerScore rating in-house that is similar to a degree of like the PFF grades that you referenced. They're not public yet, and we're still kind of tweaking like what the right formula is. But what we have noticed a trend there is that when that starting offensive tackle comes out next week, their backup almost always one of the lowest rated or scoring offensive tackles in the league. Like the drop off is clear. But the offensive tackle issue has been really interesting for me to track this year. No doubt in terms of just widening out what the stories of the season are, it's the retread quarterback. To me, it's the extremes of the season, right? Like you have these retread quarterbacks. Jordan Palmer came up with the phrase on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, Phoenix quarterback, which I am going to adopt. I like that much better because retread
That's
just
better
sounds disparaging,
than like
doesn't it?
recycled. Yeah.
Yeah, like, yeah, all right, you sucked. We'll bring you back. Like retread. Like it just has like a clunky
Like
sound
sloppy
to it.
thirds or fourths. Yeah.
Yes.
Phoenix is a little better.
Right, like rising from the ashes. Like so but it's been so fascinating to watch the success of those guys, Sam Darnold and Baker and Daniel Jones, and trying to figure out how this is possible and what the answer is to teams who have quarterbacks that they've drafted highly that are not performing well on their original, contract. Like, is the answer to keep them around a little bit longer? Is the answer a longer leash, more development time, or do they need to go somewhere else in order to experience the success that these guys are experiencing? I tend to think that it's partially the latter, more the latter, and
Yeah.
that, bad environments tend to stay bad. There's like a loser's curse that's involved in all of this, where like, you send somebody who is not maybe the thing that I always felt comfortable saying about Sam Darnold before we learned that Sam Darnold could actually play last year in Minnesota was all that we learned in his time in Carolina and New York was that he was maybe not an elite um, tractor type quarterback, like the type of quarterback who has the talent to pull a team along with them. Like
Hmm.
Patrick Mahomes clearly does, right? Like you don't have to have perfect pieces around him. Like he'll pull you there. I think we learned early on that these guys are not that, but we didn't learn whether or not they're good enough to still win games if the environment is better, right? Like if they're just going along and you're not asked to pull everyone along with you in a bad environment, if you're in a good environment, are you good enough now to win games? And I think that's what we're observing with these guys.
Also, too, like maybe it doesn't even have to be a bad coach or a bad environment. And I've definitely been dying on the Joe Shane, Brian Dable hill. Like I just believe in a lot of what they do, and
Okay,
Dable as an offensive coach and as a quarterback coach, knowing what he did for Josh Allen here in
right.
Western New York. But I think that's just kind of where our two worlds can like coexist, like the human element of things. Like Brian Dable, he's a fiery dude. And
Yeah.
he's going to be in your ear hole like he was to Josh Allen after interception against New England in 2019, losing his mind. And Josh Allen had a personality to take it. Like he's the son of a farmer, no offers, had to earn everything. Like he treats a football field like it's his backyard and wants to run
Yeah.
through your face and make dick jokes, as his teammates love to say. So that his personality kind of matches Dable. Like they can go at it. That they had a father son kind of dynamic off the field where like a Daniel Jones, I've talked to him. He is very stoic, very
Yeah.
serious. He was
Yeah.
very offended that the Giants would even think about a quarterback on Hard Knocks. Like the Hard Knocks stuff bothered him. Where I had a coach that used to be on the Bills staff and knows Dable really well. He's like, man, if that was Josh Allen, he'd say, F you, I'm going to prove you wrong out on the field. Where Jones is a little more sensitive, but like Shane Steichen is kind of serious like that too. I've heard from some Colts players, like he's very stoic and serious, and you can kind of see where their personalities would blend beautifully with, the offense and the scheme just fits Daniel Jones better too. Like to you, what has fueled that resurgence for him? Because I didn't see it coming. I don't know how many people did see this coming, but man, you
No,
go from
and
a
I
quarterback
didn't.
completing 47% Anthony Richardson to, close to 70 or whatever Daniel Jones is at, and that's how you have the best team in the league.
No, I definitely observed the Daniel Jones signing similarly to the way I observed the Browns bringing in Joe Flacco. Like, this is a stopgap. He will be a veteran. This is a backup. This is not the ideal plan. You do not want this guy on the field. If this guy is on the field past a certain week of the season, then your plan has kind of fallen apart. He's there to buy this guy time if necessary. In this particular case, it would require an admission that the Anthony Richardson pick was not going anywhere, which is not what you want to do this early in Anthony Richardson's career. So I saw this as just like in case of emergency break glass type of move that they brought in Daniel Jones and had like didn't even entertain the concept that this could happen. I thought that maybe he could keep them afloat. This has been a fascinating situation to me because I kind of saw the Sam Darnold thing in Minnesota happening. last year. Like I could
Hmm.
see that that as a possibility. And maybe it was just because I was so married to a prior that I had about Sam Darnold, which was we haven't learned if he sucks yet. Like, and every year we had this conversation, and people would go, okay, we're going to learn this year. And I'd go, you're right. We are going to learn this year. I think that they
Yeah.
put enough pieces around him. And then at the end of the year, they'd come back, and I'd be like, okay, I hate to do this again, but I still didn't learn because as it turned out, the coaching was bad, or as it turned out, the pass catchers dropped all the whatever. Like there were always excuses that I felt like were explanations. So he can't use them as excuses because then they're excuses. But I was like, but they are legitimately explanations. And so I kind of thought if you put him in a good environment, and I saw Minnesota as a good environment, that maybe he would be good enough. So that one didn't surprise me. This one surprised me. And it might just be that I wasn't so locked in on Daniel Jones in the same way that I was Sam Darnold. For whatever reason, hadn't had the same amount of conversations or thought process going into him. Um, but it's the original idea of them going to him, I thought would make sense because he would at least give them, he would lower the ceiling for all of the other offensive weapons so that you could at least get a read on a Michael Pittman or Alec Pierce, or like raise the floor for them so that they can play professional football. If the quarterback is so overwhelmed with the
Yeah.
situation that they don't get the ball to the right place at the right time, or they're errant throws and they're not catchable, then like nobody has the ability to do their job either. And so I thought when they moved to Daniel Jones that that's what was going to happen there, that at least he would be a professional quarterback that would raise the floor. I didn't see the ceiling. I didn't see the ceiling. And I think the ceiling is still hard to explain, frankly, based on everything that we thought we knew about Daniel Jones and his abilities.
The teams themselves are making miscalculations too. I mean, the Vikings last night, they've just got to be like, man, what what were we thinking? And I mean, Sam Darnold won them 14 games. I get it. It was ugly against
Yeah.
Detroit in week 17, against the Rams in the wild card. It went south fast, and I got it. Like I think I wrote a column like bring on the JJ McCarthy era. But
Right.
to kind of go with the McCarthy Wentz route, like you're hedging your bets with Wentz, like maybe he's a reclamation in his own right, and we use all this money to load up on defense and the offensive line. Well, I mean, you just got boat raced by the Chargers. Like all these signings really haven't done much on defense. Like the defense has been a disaster, and Wentz has been a disaster.
Yeah.
Granted, his line has not been good, and man,
And
it was
he's
sad
clearly
watching
hurt
that.
at this
And he's
point.
hurt. It was
Yeah.
sad. But these
To me,
teams, I mean,
my
there's
biggest
not
question there is
everybody's a reclamation project, I guess is the
what's going
point.
on with JJ? Like, why? I mean, how hurt is he? Like, what's the story there with his injury? Because I would imagine that they must desperately want him on the field. And I understand, and I think you were right to write that article about bring on JJ McCarthy. You have this guy that you use draft capital on.
Yeah.
You decided that he was good enough and that he could have success in the NFL. At some point, you have to see that. You just have to. So we just haven't had a chance to see that. I feel like, Carson Wentz is a backup plan. And I mean, I know, especially in the last few weeks, there's been talk about like, man, did they make a mistake with this whole Aaron Rodgers thing? Like, shouldn't they have brought that? Like, what could have been if Aaron Rodgers was here because he's having relative success in Pittsburgh? I just don't think that that was their plan. I think their plan had to be JJ McCarthy, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, for whatever reason, his injury status is such that he is not on the field. Like, the health of that franchise needs JJ McCarthy on the field. They got to get a read on him. They got to know whether or not he's good or not so that they can figure out what to do for the future. The ideal situation is never to take a reclamation project and have success with them. The ideal situation is always to find a young guy that you can build your entire team around that's on a rookie contract for 5 years, and so you can put pieces around him that hits right away. I mean, that's the ideal roster build.
There is
So,
value to that experience. So is what we're seeing.
yeah.
Like these quarterbacks have seen so much.
Yeah.
Like Darnold. I mean, I mean, he's been knocked to the canvas. Like he's been written off universally as a bust. So like he gets to San Francisco. It's like, quarterback rehab. Everybody forgets about him for a year. He gets better with Kyle Shanahan. And then he gets to Minnesota, and by then it's like, what do I have to lose, man? Like, what? I got
Yeah.
nothing to lose at this point. I mean, that's like the dreams. Same with Baker. I mean, we see the clip of him on the scout team with Carolina, and he's a joke. I mean, he's written
Yeah.
off. There's not everybody's Baker and Darnold, but man, there's something to just experience on the field, seeing different coverages and defenses, but also the experience of your name being just ripped to shreds by everyone,
I agree.
and you're forgotten.
I do think this was one of the things we talked to Jordan Palmer about a couple of weeks ago on our Sumer Sports Show podcast. And I think he said a couple of things that I thought were very interesting. One, Sam Darnold goes to that Niners team and backs up Purdy for a year, and he's in that room with Kyle Shanahan. And now all of a sudden, when you've been the quarterback who is the first round draft pick and you're on a bad team, and then you go to Carolina and the team is bad, like you're always in an environment where the room's on fire, right? And so, like, you just don't have the space to have conversations that are next level. Like, you don't even get to that point because you're like, how do we plug the gaps here? Like, just putting
Yeah.
fingers in the, like, what's that old story about, like, the, like, plugging the dike or whatever? That's what you're doing when you're on a team that is not winning games. You're trying to figure out desperately basic ways that something will work. When you're in an environment where the team is actually having some success and you can get to those next level of thinking and thoughts, and like now you're just looking at football in a different way. I think that is one advantage of these guys going to different environments. I think that they're just having different conversations. They're learning different things. They're learning at a different rate. But then also, I think that there's something to the personality type that we learn now that is hard to evaluate in these quarterbacks coming out of college, which is like, I mean, people try to, as from a data standpoint, this is hard to put a data point on, like someone's grit, someone's fortitude, someone's resilience, and you can
Yeah.
try to look for examples, and teams always do. They look for examples of like that guy taking a hit and popping up. Like the thing that we see about Baker now when he's like knocked out and he pops up to talk shit, right? And we're like, we love it. We love it viscerally. But why it actually matters is because it means he's resilient. It means he's not going to let you get one over on him. And that's valuable because now when you get knocked down and you lose a game, his mentality is not, oh no, does everyone hate me? And the way Jordan Palmer phrased it was, he said, if you care what people think, that's going to get in your way. That is the one thing that he said is a binary yes, no. You can work in the NFL as a quarterback. You can overcome tough times. He's like, if I see that you care about what other people think and you're like checking social media to see what they said about you after the
Yeah.
game, you can't overcome that. That is if you start running into trouble, it will all fall apart.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that that's what we learn about these guys after they've, been in trouble for a little bit. Like, do they have that resilience where they just go, okay, and get back to work, you know? And you don't know it until it happens.
That is just a phenomenal breakdown, Lindsay, because you're absolutely right. It's life too. Like
Yeah.
it's applies to all of us and
Yeah.
all of our jobs. And that's I got to give Scott McLuhan his flowers because he was former Redskins GM and was brought in as a consultant with the Browns ahead of that draft in 2018. We've talked about it. Like I wrote about it when right before the Browns moved on from Baker on why good times were coming for Baker and the Browns, and he got into everything you just detailed, like trying to figure out what is that grit, what is that perseverance, what is that it factor that he had, because you could see it at Oklahoma, and he would cross that line, he's grabbing his nuts and looking at the
Yes.
opponent, he's taking the flag and stabbing it at midfield, he's talking crap to the Kansas guys. There's how do you quantify it and what does it
Yeah.
mean? And how does it combine with his actual talent? But he pushed hard and Elliot Wolf got on board, John Dorsey got on board, and it was a surprising pick at the time, right? I mean, nobody really knew what the Browns were going to do there leading up to that draft. And now they're all fired and they're all elsewhere, but they're looking pretty good right now. I mean,
And I
I
wonder
guess you
too.
take Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, but
Well, yeah,
Baker has aged pretty well.
he sure has. He sure has. And I mean, who's to say that he didn't need to actually go through the things that he went through in order to get to this version of Baker? Which is not to say that like the
True.
version of Baker that we saw out of the gate was
Chicken or
really
the
all
egg
that bad,
stuff.
right? It
Yeah.
was relative. But I wonder with like somebody like Russell Wilson, to me, and this is just my opinion, he seems very much like he cares what people think. I think even in a good way, because sometimes as a human being, I think that that's actually a good trait, or it can be. Like if you, uh, I think he's a genuinely nice person. I think
Yes.
when I have interviewed Russell, I've noticed he goes out of his way to use my name.
Hmm.
There are little things that he does that I think are meant to make you feel important and special, right? And I think that that's what he does when he goes to hospitals, and a lot was made of that, particularly earlier in his career. And I think that that's a really good personality trait, that he is observant of the way that he is observed by people who interact with him, and he wants them to have a good experience. But I also wonder if you can have that maybe and have it not be rooted in your value to yourself is how they see you,
Yes.
and
Man.
needing to earn that. And I wonder if when he started experiencing some difficulties in his career, if that's not why it seems like it snowballed in the last few years, because he does care. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just an observation that I had after Jordan Palmer said that. My brain immediately went to Russell, because I think he's the biggest example that I can cite where it seems I feel pretty confident saying that he thinks what other people think, or he cares what other people think.
The player that jumps to the forefront of the brain for me is Aaron Rodgers. He cares deeply what people think about him, and
He would
there's a lot of
argue
bad to
with
that.
you on
But
that, don't you think?
what's that?
Don't you think he would argue with you on that?
Oh, for sure. He
Okay.
would, for sure. What I would say, though, the fact that he is a world class, Hall of Fame, all time grudge holder is
Yeah,
a good
you're
thing
right.
in terms of his career. Whether the slight has been real or perceived, like
Uh-huh.
he finds it, he uses it. And I mean, you can hear it in his voice, you can see it in his eyes, those McAfee interviews, but really talking to people around him, like look, I mean, it's just the truth. Like he cut off family, cut off close friends. Like in terms of foundation, like what matters deeply to him, it's not his family. And I've reported on that back to the Bleacher Report days. And I think Mina Kimes wrote the story about his like spiritual journey. And like, that's another thing that's a foundation for many people in their life, like religion. I don't know what he believes, but he kind of explained it doesn't really, it's kind of all over the place. I think he cares deeply what people think. That something has to kind of fill a void in your life. And he's experimented with a million different things. This is definitely one of those things. Like he cares and he uses it. And I can just see Aaron Rodgers sitting down with Mike Tomlin at some point in the offseason and then both like saying to each other, like, let's stick it to everybody. Like nobody believes in us. Let's go out there and win together. They are right now, I suppose, but what do you make of Aaron Rodgers as a Pittsburgh Steeler going into a game against his old friends in Green Bay?
Well, real quick, one thing that I just thought of as you were describing him in that manner is the way that he reacts when teammates make mistakes. That actually does fit that because it that always has felt to me like it stems from insecurity. And I know that it could stem from just simple frustration. Like I put in my work, like please just do your part, right? So that I can have success. But the visible display where like it's gone back a few years now, where especially if some of these younger guys, that's when it always hits me when they make a mistake and he does the and I always read that as you need us to know it was him and not you.
Yes.
And
He
and
Thursday night.
and
It
so
was
to that point,
nonstop against
yeah.
Cincinnati.
Uh, so the Steelers thing I think is interesting. He it in some ways to me feels very obviously on the back end of his career in terms of his play has changed. It just has changed. And it started changing that last year in Green Bay. It wasn't all of a sudden in New York. It's a continuation of a pattern that has developed. What we've seen this year, his average depth of target, the Steelers have the lowest average depth of target in the NFL. That in and of itself is not a sign of an unhealthy offense, right? Like the Lions have a low average depth of target. This is just kind of like what they do quite frequently. For Aaron, he had a high average depth of target for the majority of his career, and then it kind of starts to like go down. What we've seen historically is that quarterbacks who stick around long enough for this to become a problem, which is a very small sample anyway, right? You have to, like, in order to stick around to play at this age, you have to be a very good quarterback. There is a consistent pattern of at the end of one's career, the average depth of target plummets. And to me, it feels related to just physical limitations that are natural as you get older. You no longer physically can do some of the things that you could do when you were younger. And arm strength would seem to be tied to that for a quarterback. So what we typically see is average depth of target drops, or if the average depth of target stays high, like in the case of Peyton Manning at the end of his career, then the accuracy drops because you just don't have the arm strength to consistently do the things that you need to do to get the ball downfield accurately. And in his case, he's been so interesting because the average depth of target's been low for a few years now. But he still hits every once in a while, right? This is where the brain that doesn't deteriorate comes in handy. Where if the defense will allow you to get away with certain things that you need to, like the short throws, then he's masterful at diagnosing the defense and knowing, oh, that guy this guy's going to be open because of something that I saw on the defense. And so he knows who to hit, right? So that's what I've observed about him this year that I think is interesting, is that when he does go long, and he doesn't go long very much, he only has 16 attempts of 20 yards or more. That ranks 27th in the NFL.
Aaron Rodgers doesn't go long, you just said. Okay.
Oh, your entire brand.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
He's 33rd in air yards per game. But 8 of his last 9 touchdown throws have been 10 or more yards. Like, if you look at his passing chart, it's all at the line of scrimmage. All these little green and white dots, and then more white dots out here once we start going further downfield, but all the blue dots are down there. It's like all by themselves. He just is hitting them exactly at the right time when they have like a coverage breakdown or something. He diagnoses it. He gets the ball exactly when he needs to. But also his last 3 interceptions have been 10 plus yards or more. So I'm really interested this week in him going up against the Green Bay defense, which is a good defense. And one of the benefits that the Steelers have with their team this year, which I don't think that they are a good team. I don't put them in the category of some of the good teams in the NFL, but I think they might be good enough, right? To like win the division, get to the playoffs. The division, they are definitely benefiting this year from a very down year for the AFC North. The rest of the teams, Joe Burrow getting hurt in Cincinnati, Cleveland, we kind of knew was going to be what they are. So you have the benefit from a schedule standpoint. They now have 3 games coming up, though, starting with Green Bay, Indy, and then the Chargers. We're going to learn a lot about Pittsburgh in this 3-week stretch.
It's just, I laugh because it's like, as much as you think things change for the Steelers, they really don't. Like it's an 8 to 10 win team.
Right.
I watched the Patriots game start to finish earlier this year, and it is just, it's hysterical. Like they have no business, I mean, winning that game, but they force a million turnovers in all these different funky ways. But it's not all fluky. If they might be funky, but not fluky. Like Cam Hayward's at the 1 yard line tipping a pass and forcing a fumble, and Miles Killebrew will block a kick, or somebody will have a punt return for 37 yards. Like they win these mucked up games, and they're mucked up by design. Whether it's that or everything that you just described with Aaron Rodgers, though, I think that is still the ceiling for the team, though, because Aaron Rodgers. It's funny, like that. Which game was it? Not the Bengals game. Whoever they played before that they beat. drawing a blank. But Rodgers, it was fascinating because he threw deep up to DK Metcalf and underthrew him terribly. I mean, it was kind of sad to watch, a once great quarterback underthrow somebody that bad. And then the next play hits him on a crosser. DK gets a bunch of yak. And then a couple plays after that, he hits Connor Hayward on an absolute vintage cross the body missile. Like, it's like, where did that come from? Like, where did that Hail Mary throw come from against
Right.
Cincinnati? Like,
Right.
you can tell they didn't complete the pass, but he was kind of happy. Like, wow, I can throw it 70 yards or whatever the hell it was, 60 plus yards. Like, maybe there is a little arm strength still to Aaron, but
Well,
he's definitely not asked. He's picking his spots because it is all dink and dunk right now.
I also think, and that's a good point, and I want to clarify because I think the point about the A dot and the arm strength is that you can't do that frequently, like
Mm-hmm.
the way that you once could in your career, where that is your regular throw. It's more like you kind of got to gear up for it a little bit, like put everything you have into it. If you do that with a degree of frequency, then you won't be able to do it as well, right? Like, because then your arm kind of tie. I'm not an
No, you're
expert
right,
in this
Lindsay. Because
particular
I look at
area,
that
but this,
chart and it's like trypophobia. Like, all these little dots all clustered together gives me the heebie-jeebies.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I wonder about like the defenses that they played. So Seattle has a very good defense, and they did not do well against Seattle, right? So there's part of me that's like, okay, so you can get away with this
Yeah.
against certain teams, but will you if we plop you into the playoffs and now you're playing good teams regularly? Is this something that they won't be able to figure a way around? And maybe the answer is no. This is also a weird year this year in the AFC too, because I mean, look at the standings. Look at the teams that are in the playoffs right now. They are not the teams that anyone would have predicted at the beginning of the year. The Chiefs are technically outside the playoffs right now. They're going to get in, and like we're not.
That's
So there will
hilarious.
be some changes to that list, but there are some teams in the AFC that are just terrible. And the way that I would feel comfortable making that statement is not because of win-loss record. At this point in the season in particular, it's because of the scoring differential. Scoring differential is a big signal as to who is a good team and who's a bad team. If you are consistently outscoring your opponents by the margin that you should be, if you are not playing down to the level of competition, you're not keeping games close and keeping teams around who should have no business being around, the good teams don't do that, right? Like the Lions last year were plus 222 on the season in scoring. They were phenomenal. And the bad teams, the Titans right now are minus 96. They've been outscored by almost 100 points on the season so far. There are 7 teams in the AFC that have been outscored by 39 points or more on the year. There's 1 in the NFC.
Mm.
Like it is you've got a chunk of teams in the AFC that you could just go bye. Except for I don't think you can say bye to the Ravens because they are one of those bottom 7 teams, and they at least in part got there without Lamar Jackson. So if he comes back, I think you kind of, can get back in the conversation. But there are like the AFC just feels muddier. Like there's bad teams, and then there's teams up here that you're like, I don't know, are they even good? Like who's good in the AFC that you feel comfortable about that doesn't have a glaring hole? For me, it's the Chiefs. And then I'm not sure.
Could this be a reason why I'm not sure. We might have to workshop it here, but like the AFC, you've got all the quarterbacks over there: Lamar, Josh Allen,
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and maybe like the GMs and the coaches piecing together their rosters are trying to figure out how to defend these athletic quarterbacks. They're overcompensating, maybe skewing a little finesse, skewing a little more toward athleticism, and then because over in the NFC, you've got teams like the Lions, the Eagles last year to the extreme. I mean, they want to grab you by the collar and curb stomp you. Like they're
Right.
physically tougher. They're
Yeah.
built different. I know that's an oversimplification, but there's got to be something to that now as the game kind of evolves.
I wonder if that's not true, if you're not onto something. And then also in the cases of those teams with those good quarterbacks that you mentioned, soon as they go out, team goes by. which is, I mean,
Yeah.
you could argue that there are a lot of teams in the league that if you take their starting quarterback out, like, oh no, like breaking news, Lindsay, they're not going to be as good. But Cincinnati being down at the bottom, Baltimore being down at the bottom, right? Like that's clearly linked to the quarterback injuries that they've had this year. But up at the top, like I mean, Indy as the 1 seed, New England at number 2, Denver at number 3, Pittsburgh at number 4, Buffalo at 5. I think everyone expects them to stay in this mix. And then the Chargers and Jacksonville, like I don't it all feels so weird and not conclusive. But then you look at the NFC and the top 7 teams, I'm like, yep, that's it. Those are the
Yep.
ones. Those are the teams.
Yeah.
It just feels clear to me this year in particular, which is interesting because of what you say about the quarterbacks, which is 100% true. The best quarterbacks in the NFL, for the most part, are on the AFC side.
So like the
But
NFC teams had to try to win a different way, right? Like the
maybe,
Lions, they kind of took Jared Goff as collateral damage in a sense, and then built up this powerhouse of a ground game, and just it saw a certain DNA in their players. They're like, okay, we'll figure out quarterback at a later date, and then lo and behold, Jared Goff just becomes one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I mean, he's been probably the most underappreciated quarterback of his generation, but I don't know, it's just a different way of thinking. Like the Eagles, they got a second round quarterback. It's just different over there, but it'll be fun. We got 10 more games to make sense of this all. And Lindsay, that was awesome. My God, you just earned yourself future visits, whether you want it or not, with that performance. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here. A Sumer Sports Show, right?
yes.
YouTube, X,
Yeah.
everywhere, and get plug your show, yourself, where people can find you.
Yeah, all of the different places. Sumer Sports, we do have, if you are interested in perusing any advanced data tables, we do have advanced data tables on our website, sumersports.com, that are free. They're not behind a paywall. Also, we have a football AI chatbot that we are developing right now. It's in an open beta period. So it's not perfect, hence the beta period. But you can put in some of the advanced questions that you have about looking for advanced data points, and that also is free since it's an open beta. So that's our Sumer Brain that we're in the process of working on. And so if you have any questions about like where your team stands in terms of some of these advanced data points, one of the cool things about that, where we're trying to take that anyway, like the goal with that is that there are so many, going back to our original conversation about data and just looking for ways to quantify certain things that feel unquantifiable. There are so many different data points that feel like filter on top of filter on top of filter. So you can go find the data point in this, you can go find out how they do on third down. And then you can go find out how they do in the red zone. And then you can go find out how they do against man coverage, right? But like if you wanted to find out how your team is on third down in the red zone against man coverage, how do you even go about trying to figure that out from a data standpoint? And so the tool that we built that is Sumer Brain, that's the goal that we have in mind, is that it will be able to filter all of
Wow.
those things on top of one another for you. And so it's at a point right now where I would recommend cross-checking it with other data points, seeing if it like kind of matches your eyes and what you would expect the results to have been. Because there are definitely some things that we're tweaking through that we're learning in this open beta period. But the goal is that we're going to get there, get filterable
Awesome.
data. So yeah, so that should be cool.
Everybody check it out. I mean, you can get AI on Instagram and see Stephen Hawking in a WWE match, or you
That's
can.
so gross, Ty.
I know it's awful. It's everywhere. I saw a news story on it in the New York Post. Like this celebrity stuff. It's I don't know. I got like
That
it's
should
not.
not be legal. It should
These
not be
estates.
legal to use
I think some
somebody's
of these estates are
image.
suing, right?
I don't know.
It's crazy. Like the stuff that is.
I just can't take. I
It's like
don't
we're
have the
there. Like
bandwidth to
with
take in
AI,
what's going
like
on with
we
that.
are there. Like
I
the
know.
the
I know.
dystopia, it has
I
arrived.
know.
My point being, like, not all AI is mythical and insane and that extreme. Like, use AI for good.
Yes,
football. Help
yes,
us understand the sport in a different
yes.
way,
As
which Lindsay
someone who
Rhodes will help you
is
with.
just as scared of many of the uses of AI as all of you guys out there are, or some of you, yeah, it's definitely, but it's here to stay, right? Like it
I
just
know.
is a technological advancement that our kids are going to learn how to, look things up with this. This is the world we live in right now, and so let's try and figure out the ways that we can use this to solve problems that we otherwise could not solve. I do not need to see Stephen Hawking
Right. We don't need to
fighting
see
in a
that.
WWE match. That feels gross to me in a lot of ways. But if you tell me that I can uh, find a more information about a football team, what they should do, what they shouldn't do, I
Hmm.
don't see what the damage is there.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go pick the kids up and tell them like this is how you use AI then. You're not going to use it for the other stuff. All right, Lindsay, that was awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out.
Thanks, Ty.
Everybody do yourself a favor and check out Sumer Sports. They'll have data points and information you can't get anywhere else.
Yay.